Welcome to the Legal Leaders Podcast, brought to you by LawVu, LawVu's community for in-house legal professionals, where we dive into the heart of the legal profession to bring you unfiltered discussions with industry titans on a broad spectrum of topics.
Everyone, and welcome to the Legal Leaders Podcast. I'm David Lancelot, the CLO and EVP Advocacy at LawVu, and I have the great pleasure to have with me today Elaine Darr, who is the Vice President, Legal and Regulatory Affairs at DHL. Thanks for being with us today, Elaine.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Awesome.
Excited to be
Where are you coming from today, Elaine?
Columbus, Ohio.
Beautiful Columbus, Ohio. Of course, I knew that, and I've had the great pleasure to go to Columbus, Ohio. I think I told you I went to a National Association of College and University Attorneys conference there, and
Yes.
I brought my family, and man, it was nice. So yeah, anybody who has the opportunity to go to Columbus, Ohio should take that opportunity. We met not in Columbus, Ohio, though. Ironically, we met in Las Vegas at Running Legal Like a Business conference, and
Good.
you were presenting there, and man, I was just like, wow, this is a really interesting person with some super modern ideas about running the legal function. And I got to say, you hear a lot these days about legal innovation, right? Especially from a law firm perspective.
Yeah.
Um, I have yet to meet someone who's got your sort of experience and ability to talk about what I think about real legal innovation from an in-house perspective. So it's really great to have you on the show today, Elaine. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So let's get started with something that I think is always really, really interesting because I think it affects your entire career. The reason you got into law in the first place, what was it that got you interested in law as
Yeah.
a profession?
As a profession. So, probably like a lot of us, maybe coming out of early education, so high school, a bit naive. I was one of those people that, always running for student council, always in debate club, always wanting to do more activities and help almost like run your school. So when I looked into the external, what people do for a living, it was always like, ooh, maybe one day I'll go into public sector. I'll be, a politician. I could be a congresswoman someday.
Yeah.
So initially coming out of high school, and why I say initially, because there was a big change. I went to undergrad. I was going to major in political science. And then the plan was always to go to law school. But that is not exactly how it played out.
And
So I still went to law school, but the reasoning and really from a, career objective perspective really shifted. And I think it's probably a bit unfortunate, especially with what we're dealing with today, because I had some time to intern down at the Ohio State House as
all
an
right.
undergrad, right? So that was like my first insight into what do these people really do? And this was just the state level. This wasn't even the federal level. And I quickly realized, well, this is not really what I want to do. This is not what I thought it was. The people are not what I thought it was. I thought it was about service and, kind of you have this, moral compass and things that you want to do and ideology. And then you come to find out, no, you have to
Yes.
understand politics is politics. And those two things are not necessarily always in sync. So, I thought, well, I still want to go to law school, but I actually changed my major to business.
Mm.
I had friends around me, and including my husband at the time, who was my friend, who were business majors. And I started to hear them talk about the different concepts they were doing in their different classes, like finance and marketing. And I thought, oh, this actually sounds interesting. And I was getting a little bit bored with the traditional liberal arts, classes like political science anyhow. So I took a few business classes, loved them. And I fell in love specifically with marketing.
Mm.
So when I was about a sophomore at the time, so, you have to switch majors and transfer your credits and then figure it all out. But I did switch and ended up graduating with, a degree in business. And then I still stayed on that path of, I think there's a lot there to tie kind of, what I want to do from the legal space with business. So I'm still going to go to law school. But that's where it all started, David.
Wow. Yeah. No, I mean,
Yeah.
that's super interesting, right? Like, and I totally feel that in your way of
Yeah.
operating, right? Like, I totally feel that you did
Yeah.
undergraduate business. You might have even done an MBA, right? But I didn't know it was undergraduate. And I think that's such a great, um, inspiration for particularly students who are trying to decide, like, what do I do? The fact that you can love business and law, right, early and get that great, like, foundation for in-house work that's just super fascinating. So,
Yeah.
you go to law school. Um,
Yep.
where did you go to school? Where did you go to law school?
So I went to Capital University, which is a private school right here in Columbus, Ohio.
In
Yep.
Columbus. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
and
yeah,
Ohio State is in Columbus too, right?
right.
Like,
Yep. So
yes,
stayed in
the
Columbus
big.
from my education, undergrad at
Yeah.
Ohio State, then moved to Capital University.
Right
Yes.
on. Yeah, no, I remember being in Columbus and going out to the Ohio State campus, and it's just incredible.
Yes,
Like,
it is.
I mean, I spent a lot of time at UF, and that's a pretty big and impressive campus. That, wow,
Yeah.
Ohio State is just incredible. That football stadium is wow. Um, it's like a Greek temple.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
amazing, amazing. So then you go into private practice.
Mhm.
Fair to say.
Yeah.
What were you focused on there?
Commercial real estate. So, of course, to pick up hours and work, also did a lot of just general business and commercial work. Through some of our ups and downs in the economies, I did a little bit of litigation in labor and employment as a very young associate. I'm talking second or third year. And that was just more because at that point, you're still trying to learn and pick up work in hours where you can. But I found myself kind of, navigating towards the commercial real estate practice and the team. I loved the team. I loved the work. I loved the idea of not fighting for a living. So as I got into that work by like, I would say second, third year, then as long as I could get enough work there and grow my career, then I said, I really don't want anything to do with litigation and labor and employment. So it was kind of a natural, I always say you kind of go one way or the other and both
Sure.
are good. It just depends on how you're built. And I definitely, with a business background, saw what you do as a professional helping folks in commercial real estate or business transactions and decided, yep, this path is for me.
Yeah, yeah. And obviously commercial real estate is a very business focused area of legal practice.
Yeah. I always say it's fun. So when you're on a large project or a deal and you close it and both sides are happy. So you kind of get, it's like you don't get to the end of it and somebody's upset or somebody's a loser. And it's going to be a win-win. It's going to be a
Sure.
partnership. It's going to be, a transaction where at the end, both law firms and both clients are happy for the
Yeah.
most part. And then you
Yeah.
kind of get to do it all again. So I think it's a very interesting area of the law. Yeah.
Right on. Right on. And so, things you were building, I'm assuming, like, pretty large projects for
Yeah.
real estate stuff.
So our firm actually had a very large retail practice. So the
Okay.
partners that were in charge of that department had a lot of clients that are in the retail space. So a lot of large shopping centers around the country.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, interesting work. Yeah, interesting work. I've encountered some of that in my career for sure, building facilities and things. I
Yeah.
I don't know if I ever told you this. I worked in construction consulting before. I
Did not know
was
that.
in legal practice. Yeah, yeah. Thanks to
Yeah.
my family background, basically.
Ah,
My
okay.
dad
Yeah.
was in construction, so I did that since I was about 14. Um, worked in his office, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I find construction and real estate a really interesting area of business. So you're 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 practicing in that area,
Yeah.
and then at some point, I assume you made a decision to go, like, in house. Well,
Yeah.
tell us about what happened there.
Yeah. So I was kind of at that turning point. I was a little over 9 years in practice. And I think at that time, it was probably like 10, 11 years was a partnership track. So it's, over the years, I had received calls from recruiters that were, trying to tap all of the year, 4 to 6 years in our law firm, right? That's when they try to get you to make a move. And there wasn't really anything that was an appealing offer because I really did like my work and my team and the firm. So there was no reason to move. Um, but then I got invited to go to lunch with my current boss. and his name was Mark Smolik, and
Yes.
he has taken a new role at DHL. And he was tasked with kind of building out and taking more of a professional approach to the legal department, which is very small. And it was just because the company was smaller, right? And you're trying to grow it out from a North America perspective. So he had a lot of experience. He had already been general counsel at a couple of other large organizations. But then when he started here, he had to build a team. So he received my name as a contact that, someone I may want to talk to. And I don't know well, you've met Mark. He's really good at selling, right?
I
And
was
he's
going to
really
say,
good at creating talent. So we had a lunch. He told me a little bit about what he was doing at DHL. I wasn't that familiar with the company at the time. But then next thing you know, we kind of have a second lunch. He has actual opportunity. Our organization was growing materially, and we had a ton of commercial real estate work because it's one of our solutions is we actually do buy land and build warehouses,
right on.
sell them. So he said, would you ever be interested in joining the team? So that's really what started the
Totally.
discussion. I
Yep.
thought it was a good fit. I definitely thought what he was talking about doing from like kind of this early, like, let's build the organization, let's get it from a process and innovation with a business perspective going. I thought, well, it's not only kind of joining an organization where you're just checking the box and doing the work. It's actually an opportunity to join his team and help him on this journey. So ended up going for it. And that is how I got to DHL. And now
Yeah.
I've been here for 14 years. 14
Wow.
years.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. So as you say, I've met Mark. I've seen Mark speak, and
Yes.
talk about an engaging, charismatic, and modern legal leader, right?
Yes.
And role model.
Great.
Very, very cool to have had that opportunity, I think, for you to get on that sort of journey.
Yeah.
And I hadn't heard before how you like commercial real estate, DHL. I totally get it now, right? Like obviously
Yeah.
you're building facilities all over the world, and you need somebody who has the experience to do that. So that must have been a really interesting transition from I guess national to an international. Is that like, did your practice kind of go
Yeah.
like all of a
Uh,
sudden you're building stuff in South America and stuff like that?
yep. It was is a total change. So, I mean, from a law firm perspective in private practice, it was just US. It wasn't even Canada. And
Right.
then our area of responsibility within DHL is all of the Americas.
Right on.
So, US, Canada, all of Mexico, Brazil, Colombia, Peru, Argentina,
Hmm.
and Chile. So you're leveraging local counsel because obviously you're not licensed. You don't understand how things just get done from
Yep.
a day-to-day perspective. But it was a totally different scope of responsibilities. And, it was such an opportunity to kind of stretch and grow, right? Yeah. Just
Yes.
for,
Well, as soon as anyone says Argentina, I always have to laugh, right? Because it's probably a good interview question, right? Like if you meet someone, you say, "Have you ever done business in Argentina?"
right.
And if they have, then you know that they understand how challenging working
Yeah,
internationally can be.
it
Um,
can. Mhm.
yeah, there's plenty of
Yeah.
other challenging environments. I mean, Peru, obviously, a bunch of those places you talked about. Even Canada can be quite challenging. But man, Argentina, wow.
You
Um,
had there's a very interesting relationship with Argentina.
well,
Yeah.
I could go on and on,
Yeah,
but
I know.
yeah. So that's fascinating, right? So you
Yeah.
come from a private practice role, U.S. focused, and then into a really broad international role at a big international business. And
Yeah.
DHL, where's the headquarters for DHL, like international?
Yeah. So the headquarters is in Bonn, Germany. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
And
Yeah.
it's a massive organization. And so when you start to break it down, it's actually 5 divisions. It's the world's largest supply chain logistics company. And
Right.
it's been built over the last, 60, 70 years with acquisitions and expansion. And now we're in about 233 countries.
Well,
And you look at the division and then think about what we just discussed, like my area and, kind of across the Americas, we really are only servicing the supply chain division.
right.
But, there are lots of lawyers in our organization that are also servicing express, the, freight forwarding business, the e-commerce business. And then of course we have the mail division, which is post
Yep.
in Germany.
Yep.
So it's a massive organization. And I like to say that because my piece is large and it's expansive compared to what I did in private practice, but it's still only one piece. And I think, we'll probably get into it, but that's where some of the opportunities lie as a professional, because I've been here 14 years and I feel like there is so much opportunity to do different things, because if you think about that, you could tap into the express business and take a role, or the freight forwarding. I was in legal or doing regulatory or compliance work, but it's just, there's just so much that you can do as a lawyer in this organization.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
and I've had some experiences in a similar vein with international businesses, and it's just the case that when you're in an organization like that, there are just a ton of opportunities.
Ton. Ton.
And if you love, different cultures and the
And
opportunity to travel. I talk to law students all the time, right? Because I teach this course at UF, and often the question is, how do I get to make travel part of my career? Um, I don't think they realize how not fun sometimes
yeah.
business
Yeah.
travel is. but but obviously I tell them regularly, you work for an international business as quickly as possible and make yourself available, make yourself mobile. And doors will open. Doors will open. So maybe we maybe we get deeper into where you're at now, Elaine. So you're sort of doing I assume the real estate work for a couple of years at DHL.
Yep.
What happens next?
So a couple years into it with the growth of our organization, kind of how I started with saying kind of Mark is building out like the legal department.
Yep.
There was an opportunity to take a more senior position within legal. So
Sure.
I was quickly promoted to vice president of legal within 2 years of being here. And really what that meant is not just doing the individual contributor work, but also then stepping up and being a manager of people. And the people were what we call our commercial contracting team, which is a combination of lawyers and non-lawyers that do our customer contracting for our organization. So that
Yep.
was kind of that first pivotal moment of going from I'm just cranking out the legal work to I'm now actually being a leader of people and helping like put together a strategy for the department.
Yeah.
That was the first move, and that was still within legal.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, I knew we were on the same wavelength. I used to run the commercial contracting team at our at eBay Classifieds, and love that area of work. Right. Very,
Yeah,
very much, as you say,
I do
commercial
too. Yeah,
business.
yeah.
Uh, so you're running that function,
Yep,
and that's for the DHL logistics business in North America, all the commercial legal work.
yep. Still supply chain, still in North America. And then was only really in that role for about 2 years. And I got picked up by the business and asked if I wanted to actually go into leading a function. So within supply chain, we have kind of our central bucket of functions that support operations. And that entire department is called Operations Excellence.
Okay.
So it has like safety, quality, security, performance management, continuous improvement, accelerated digitalization. Those are all the areas. It's kind of like an umbrella and like the glue that supports supply chain. So I was asked if I wanted to move into a role that was VP of Operations Excellence. And the idea was kind of to pick up on some of those, strengths and skills that they saw me being a strong lawyer, but also having the business and financial acumen, and to see if we could kind of tap into that in a business role. So that was a move technically outside of the legal department. Yes.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
that's pretty, I don't even know how to describe that. That's pretty amazing. So this is literally a situation where the business said, that lawyer over there
Mhm.
doing commercial deals is so good at basically the non-legal stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like
Right.
that we want her to come over here and do that for the entire business, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's pretty unusual.
It is
I
very,
haven't heard that one before.
I mean, we had a very progressive board. So, the CEO was directly involved in these conversations. And he said, look, we're talking about, leadership attributes. We're not talking about who's the best lawyer on the team. I'm certainly never going to be the best lawyer on the team, right? There's people way smarter than me. But
You
what we're
know,
looking for is people that can take either a function or, maybe an area that's struggling and kind of take it from good to great, put framework, action plans in place, build high performing teams. So more of that. How do you take something and you really evolve it or transform it? And I think probably the CEO who, was very senior and he had kind of spotted talent or being able to leverage people's strengths. He was really good at it. He and a few others had picked up on there was something there where I kind of had a knack for that. And
mm,
it's interesting because now I've changed roles a couple more times being asked to do the same thing,
yeah,
right? Like,
yeah,
here's an area, kind of, let's see, what is a better approach? How can we solve for this and make this area, whether it's a function, a portion of legal or regulatory, that maybe is, I wouldn't say necessarily preventing business growth, but maybe not aligning with the business and supporting the growth.
sure.
So it definitely kind of, ended up being my brand internally where I had moved, across different functions and portions of the business, even indirect operations with P&L
Mm,
ownership.
yeah,
Because direct operations with P&L ownership, really go. I just kind of find, ooh, David, you're good at that. Let's do it. Elaine, what about this? Let's do it. And I'm extremely lucky to have been working for that kind of progressive leader, right? And leadership, because most companies aren't going to do that. It's kind of stay in your lane. So I
I
really
was,
lucked out, here at
yeah, yeah.
DHL. Yeah.
I was going to say, because you've got a couple at least that Mark and this CEO you're talking about. You've got some people there, but it feels to me like there's a culture, and
Mhm.
maybe it is a logistics business. They are concerned about efficiency and scale and things like that. So I have to imagine there's some kind of culture there uh, that encourages that sort of thing, thinking almost like outside the box.
Yeah, there is. Absolutely. We put a ton of time and energy into it. And if you talk to a lot of, our executives or senior leaders, you will hear people with amazing tenure at a large, public company, 20 years, 25 years, 30 years. And these are very high performing individuals that just, at this point they could have got picked up and named their number outside of our organization, but they stay because of that. We always say our culture is what keeps people. Because, yeah, what we do, logistics, supply chain, it's not necessarily the most appealing, when you're recruiting young people. What is that, right?
Yep.
We laugh because COVID actually really helped us because
Yep.
for once, you don't have family members asking you what is supply chain. And it's like everybody all of a sudden knew, oh, that's what supply chain is. Like, so, from a business profile, you're not recruiting a lot of people unless they happen to be like a supply chain major and a top university. But all of the, lawyers and HR and finance and IT folks, they're here because they get to do work they love that's very interesting. But we have a culture that is all about leveraging talent, continuous improvement, being creative, deploying technology to solve for things. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Well,
it's
that's
pretty
awesome.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
No,
can
that's awesome.
say another
Really, really
thing
neat.
about our organization. Yeah. Which is why I'm here, right? 14
Yeah.
years is
Yeah.
a long time. Yeah.
Yes. Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Um, Fantastic. And I have to say, I know DHL, uh, very well from seeing the yellow and red branded cargo bikes all over Europe, right? You'll
Yeah.
just be somewhere and there they go, room
Yeah.
straight by in
I have
Denmark or something, right? Germany for sure. Yeah. So it's a
yeah.
really, really well known business. So you're doing this operational excellence across the business role. So I just want to be clear about that. No legal work, like
No
that
legal
wasn't
work.
a no legal work at all
Legal work.
for a couple
Yeah.
of years.
Yep. The interesting thing is I became the internal customer of the legal department, which is pretty,
Yes.
yeah. So we used to get a, kick out of that because I would have I had multiple functions that I was responsible for within OE, so safety, security, quality. And my teams would have to reach out to legal.
Mhm.
And that was very interesting because, when you have attorneys providing advice and consultation, but they know that department has, Elaine as their manager,
Wow.
like, well, here's, what I think, but also ask Elaine, because it was kind of unfair to the junior lawyers because they're
Yeah.
like, well, wait a minute, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they just laugh. They're like, you're the client now. I'm like, I am.
I think there's a ton of value on both ends of that sort of transaction, right? And particularly for you in having perspective on what it's like to be a business person receiving legal services. Because I think we often, as lawyers, never get to do that. Never get to be on the other side of the conversation. I've really enjoyed that too,
Mhm.
in a couple of different places, but like the there's a ton of value there. And it's almost as if that should be part of the training. Do you know what I mean? Like
I
there
do.
should be a way that we can
No,
rotate people into business-ish roles so they can see what it's like to have to deal with legal, right?
right.
Uh,
Right.
and
I
how
think,
to, yeah,
right. Go ahead.
no,
I was just
please.
going to say one of the things that was very eye-opening, and we had a very high-performing, responsive legal team. So, they were all about customer experience and customer service. However, it was eye-opening how dependent operations is on some basic legal guidance, right? So you could see how intimidated they were on interpretation of a regulation with respect to shipping or something. Oh, we better check with legal. And you can quickly look at it and you're like, there's nothing to check legal on. But you can feel it. They felt so intimidated by making a decision. Because for us, we do this all day long, but for them, this was very, very significant. Oh my goodness, we have to ask legal. And so to see that and see that response, that they're so dependent and need that consultation in order to move their business forward, it was completely eye-opening. I saw it in a whole different way than when I was on the other end. Yeah.
Yes. No, you're
Yeah.
reminding me of one of my business leaders told me once, David, people actually listen to what you say because you're the lawyer, right? You may think that they're kind of like, don't tell legal, we don't want them in the room, whatever. But when you do say something, it's almost like, what do we do now? Like the lawyer said something, we have to, like they're stuck in this box. So it's a great way to like open up that door of perception to like, you need to be both like integrated and connected and business minded, but you also need to be careful about what you say,
Yeah.
and be clear that whether you're saying, like definitely don't do this or just like, I just want to bring this to your attention. Let's have a conversation about it because things can go pear shaped uh, quickly if they
Right.
think the wrong thing. So, couple years in a like pure business operations
Yeah.
across the business role.
Yes.
And then,
And then I come back to legal. And we were doing some kind of some reorganization here in the Americas of how we were kind of positioning some of the different functions. And at that point, regulatory affairs, that discipline and that team was not within legal. So it was kind of, we looked at it from a just synergies perspective, that I would come back to legal and help with two things. And one of them was your favorite topic. So the first was keep going from a regulatory affairs perspective, because we had a big focus on building out a discipline for customs and trade controls, right? We were trying to get
mm,
better and best in class from a supply chain perspective and really replicate what our other divisions had built in express and freight forwarding. So that was something that was on my plate to kind of continue to do and build up within legal. But then Mark delegated to me all of legal innovation, technology, and analytics.
mm,
And so the idea was to come in and really that would be putting together kind of our blueprint and our design of how we were going to take, legal operations to that next level. We had always had a great fundamental understanding, way back when Mark and I started together of like running legal like a business, because we have been putting all those building blocks in place for decades.
mm,
But this was like time to kind of, okay, how can we take it to the next level? And so he knew that was also a passion of mine. So it made sense with me coming back to legal to own that area. And
For
yeah,
sure.
that's how we
Yes.
met. Yeah.
Yes. And that's how we met. I
Yeah.
saw you talking
That's how
about
we
your
met.
work there, and I can't wait to talk more about that. But I really feel like I need to just pull on the thread of, uh, so regulatory affairs, is that in your mind the same as like government relations
A
or,
little bit. Yep.
yeah,
So it kind of has multiple. So it's interpretation with legal on all, regulatory obligations that apply to our operating profile.
right.
So things like shipping of pharmaceuticals or doing like defense contracting work, all of that
Mm,
would be within regulatory. But then naturally,
yes,
because those regulations are always changing and impact what you do every day, you also have a piece of that is that trying to influence how those regulations are either changed or modified or new regulations come to that.
sir.
It's a little bit
Yes.
about.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow. I actually didn't realize that you were involved in that as deeply as you are as well. So yeah, that's
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
fascinating.
I'm not officially a lobbyist. I will say that. I do not put myself out as one. We have a whole team in DC that would
Sure.
be an extension of us, and they are unbelievable and they're very integrated.
Yeah.
From kind of more of the traditional lobbying networking perspective in Washington.
Yep.
But there's still definitely a part of my role that is liaising with them and
Yep.
ensuring that we're representing our company's interests.
Fascinating. Fascinating. Yeah. Cause I mean, when I think of the law, right, it's an interesting dichotomy that you have, right?
No,
You have this really like, you're back in the state house doing that kind of stuff, right?
get
But
back
on
in
the other
shape.
side, about as cutting edge in an operational perspective as it gets. So you're still doing the two sides of yourself that are so valuable. Really interesting. Really
Yes.
interesting. So, um, let's hear some about the really interesting, innovation and operations work that you guys have been doing at DHL and talking about, publicly. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. So we've spent a lot of time and energy just getting the building blocks in place. And so I would say it kind of starts with, we have a very integrated intake portal. So that's how we interact like a legal front door with our
yep.
business. And
Yep.
so we have great visibility to all of our legal work. Where is it coming from and why? And kind of can do some root cause and some, great things from a legal perspective because we have a well-established front door. Then we have the basics. We have a full external counsel and matter management platform, right? So that'd be more your outside counsel program, your matter management and your spend management. We have best in class document management system. So we've been working with NetDocs for over a decade. Um, and then on top of that, we have spent a lot of time in hiring analysts on our team to actually take all of the data that's available in those underlying applications and pull it together with some of the business applications to have a full suite of reporting. So in Power BI,
Yep.
so we kind of call it like a day in the life where when Mark, as the general counsel, comes in, he gets a whole dashboard and across his external counsel, his material matters, his internal resourcing, maybe root cause, what's driving claims. He can get a snapshot and really, get some action and deliverables from all that data. So we've been spending a lot of time to just kind of get us to that next level leveraging those, I'll call them the building blocks and applications that we've had in place for some time.
Right on.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that idea, as you know, of moving from a sort of reactive and I guess it's relatively old-fashioned model of managing the legal function, where it's kind of based on
Yep.
gut and feeling.
Yeah.
I feel like the team is busy. They say they're busy all the time. I feel like we do a lot of work. They tell me they do a lot of work. The
They
business
tell
is
me.
the business is kind of happy. Maybe sales isn't, whatever.
Right.
And moving from that stance to let's
Yeah.
just throw the dashboard up on the screen in
Yeah.
various sort of scenarios and say, this is how we're gonna um, this is the discussion we're going to have today, and it's based on real
Yeah.
time
That's
information,
right.
real information, not guessing.
And
So that's a huge change for legal, right?
Huge
Like to
change.
go,
And I think I took it for granted that it was so unique until I talked to you and others, because kind of being in the business for 7+ years coming back, I mean, I expect, legal work is a product to me, right? It's a product and a service. So I want visibility to how much that product, we're delivering. I want to be able to forecast volume, right? What's coming at us based on historicals. And then I want to tie my resourcing plan to that. So how much headcount and skill set, what areas do I need to attack and deliver that product to the end customer? So I think like being in the business for so long and having that from a business perspective, when you come back to legal, you realize, whoa, when
yeah,
you and other experts in the industry say like, wow, we're not even there. We're just reacting to what comes to us. I didn't realize how far we have to go from a legal perspective until I actually got to come back and then have conversations with folks like, well, wait, you're forecasting legal work and then you're tying your resourcing and labor plan, to that work. It's like, yes. Yeah. And they're like, I don't even know what work is coming into my department. So you kind of feel for them.
yeah,
But I have to say, David, it's very important because I've had a few conversations with general counsels that maybe don't have that same type of discipline. But I said, I can't do this on my own. I mean, I'm very lucky that I have an organization that sees that ROI on that investment and then gives us the IT resources and data analytics resources to do all of that. Because everything I just described is not lawyers. It's
totally.
all these other disciplines helping us. I need data scientists, I need data analytics people. I need people that understand our IT architecture to do, all the APIs. So it's not like from a legal perspective, we can't even take the credit. All we can take credit for is saying we want to do these things and we have a passion for change and transformation. But if I didn't have all that support, it wouldn't happen. And I know a lot of folks out there that are, the head legal, whether it's general counsel, chief legal officer, whatever their role is, they're just not structured that way in their organization. So it's not like they can just turn this on, even if they wanted to.
Yeah, no, indeed, indeed. I think the first step is that mindset shift. Is
Yeah.
that
Do
shift
what you
from
can.
yeah
Yeah. Do what
is
you
the
can.
and I'm not sure there was a specific plan there, but it sounds like there was to take you and take that skill set that you had and like really make it the business skill set. And you're reminding me of being in these business meetings where you're like, somebody's putting up on the screen the dashboard from some like ad tech product, right? Like
Yeah.
behavioral targeting is doing this, and let's talk
Yep.
about if we have the right way of measuring these particular data points in these different countries. And then you go back to legal, and you're like, we're we're
Um,
really missing something here, right? Like we've got
right.
we might be able to say how many contracts we've
Oh,
processed in a
yeah.
month or something, right? But
Yes.
to go from that to here are the strategic objectives of the business, and here's how what we're doing in legal is driving those objectives in a like a authentic, credible way, right? As opposed to we're busy, so we're probably doing okay
Right.
over here. That's a big shift. That's a big shift that
Yeah.
is definitely
Yeah.
not being taught in law school or
No.
in law
No.
firm life. Uh, but but I think people like you are actually transforming the profession, right? Almost in real time, like right here, transforming the profession to help everybody who's listening and everybody out there at the conferences you speak at, including the one you guys are holding, which I'm super excited about,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, to see what this can be. Right, I'd put you guys right up here in like cutting edge. Anybody who's got data scientists working in legal, I put in the cutting edge
Yes.
bucket. Right, seriously,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of companies that don't have that resource and don't even understand why would legal need anything. They just do legal
Yeah.
work, right? Yeah. So you've spoken at conferences that I've been to about some really interesting stuff that you've
Yeah.
worked on at DHL. And I don't know if you're free to share those
Yeah.
here. I would love for the audience to hear.
So I think, so this is where I kind of started with the building blocks because with the big advancements in the large language model, right, in that chat GPT, infrastructure, everything has changed for the legal industry. But being able to take advantage of a lot of this change and a lot of the legal tech, providers that are now saying, I can train this model to do your legal work. You have to be able to pull existing data, right? And so if you don't have a robust document management system, where your data is stored in an organized method for a legal tech provider that's leveraging an LLM to pull from it, you're kind of going to be starting, well, wait, first I have to find my data, assess it, tag it, all of that.
Yep.
So the really cool thing is when everything changed, what now it's been almost 3 years, with LLMs coming on the market and being really ripe for transforming day-to-day legal work, especially the commodity work, we were quickly able to take advantage of it and some, pretty cool use cases. I mean, I think one of them we talked about on stage at the Legal Ops conference, and that was that we had, 10 years worth of, in-house drafted EEOC position statements, which are just like your, pre-litigation responses to, employee complaints. And we were able to partner with a third party to train a large language model on our 10 years worth of historical, and then to be able to draft a new one based on the same underlying claim. And it was work, but I will tell you, it was shocking for some of us on the project because we quickly saw, whoa, these legal tech vendors, they're not kidding. If lawyers and, people in the industry think you can just kind of sit on your heels and not understand what a large language model is and how it impacts that commodity drafting and day-to-day legal commercial work, then you're going to be really, really behind, because a few years from now, there is going to be no reason somebody needs to open something like position statement, which is that work product I'm talking about. Start drafting it from scratch as an attorney. You're just wasting your time. I mean, you can train a model to do that heavy lifting. Then the attorney who's signing comes in as quality control, right? They're still signing the document, so it still has to be accurate. It's just they save 80% of the time. So that's
Yeah.
one of the really fun projects that, we kicked off, and now it's in production and our attorneys and paralegals are using it. And so that was one of the quick things that we could take advantage of just because we had the data there and it was ready. So that's one of
Yes.
the, that
And
we talked.
by quick, I assume you mean quite a challenging project that you had to manage through many stages of
Yeah.
iteration and pull together a
Yeah.
team
Yeah.
and build. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And,
I, w- I,
all the data security elements from our IT perspective is much more complicated because they have to worry about so much more, right?
sure.
And get it, the model working behind our firewall and all of that. But from a legal perspective, it actually wasn't that much heavy lifting. Yeah.
Awesome. And so I think, and I've actually, I've added, so I do, plenty of presenting, Elaine, and I've added this line about structured data to
Mhm.
I'm actually doing a presentation in Atlanta next week where I'm going to talk about what you just said. Um, that,
Mhm.
that in order to get the benefits of what I would call predictive intelligence, um, you need structured information. It doesn't have to be perfectly
Yeah.
structured, but it has to
Right.
have some structure, right?
Right.
Where I think legal functions traditionally have been almost completely unstructured
Right.
in-house, right? Law firms, it's a bit, there's, more process, but in-house, just, I think the evolution of what we do, you've got emails coming in, you've got documents on people's C drives and shared
Drives.
drives and
Yeah.
SharePoint and just all over the place.
Right.
So is it the case that because you had your intake portal built out, you were able to capture more structure as things were coming into your document management?
Well, that's one, but for this particular project, really all you need is a document management system.
Incredible.
Because if you do not permit your attorneys to save that 10 years worth of legal work onto their drives, but it's in your DMS, it's
Yeah.
already has metadata and fields and tagged and structured. So then you can point the engineers directly to those files and
See.
just say, pull them, pull them.
Right.
So it's really the document management system that enabled that project to move at a very quick pace. Yeah. And
Right
I know a
on.
lot of a lot of departments don't even have that. They're just storing them on, their OneDrive or their internal drives, however they're organized. So
Yes.
that was
Yeah,
really
yeah.
that project. Yeah.
And I think the discipline to capture the metadata or
Yeah.
to have the systems, now it's possible to use the same kind of generative AI and extractive AI technologies to operationalize
Yeah.
the structured data to, move it into a place where it can be used for what you're talking about, which is more the generative side, which I think
Yeah.
is absolutely fascinating. So, um, there's that project. And then I think there was one that,
More
um,
food.
the billing project that you guys
Yes.
talked about.
So it's like a 3-phase, and we talked about kind of phase 1, 2, and 3 because it's a
Yep.
long-term vision. But this is a project where we are setting up within our DMS almost like collab space with our key law firm partners.
Yep.
And what that means is um, any, underlying work products that's been prepared for DHL over the years, meaning from any law firm or from internal. So it's like our work product on a particular type of legal document. Let's just pick one, Dave, like motion to dismiss in a certain jurisdiction. Those are in that collab space, and our external law firms would have access to it.
Mm.
And so the idea there is that our external counsel guidelines are changed to say, hey, law firm, when you have this new motion to dismiss that's within scope, you have to check collab space first. Because if we've already done very similar work product, you need to leverage that first. So that's kind of step 1. Step 2 is we are working on then leveraging and partnering with our law firms to leverage generative AI to draft even that new motion dismiss.
Mm.
And then step 3, the billing part, which we've been working on, is between us and our panel law firms. We are now agreeing to rates that are driven by the market, not necessarily what the law firms dictate. So then say, if you took end to end full process, you're leveraging your existing motion to dismiss. You're ensuring that motion to dismiss is being drafted with the help of technology. And then the third step, when your outside counsel bills you, our external counsel billing platform checks to make sure they are only billing what the market rate says based on industry averages per hour, rather than just what the law firm dictates for that piece of work product. So it's multiple pieces, but it's kind of that end-to-end process of changing the way law firms and in-house counsel work together. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a lot of
So,
people talk
yeah,
about legal innovation.
we
That's
could talk about
actual
that one
innovation.
forever.
That's
Yeah.
actual, like when I saw you guys talking about that, about saying we're gonna have law firm billing based on like zip code. I was gonna say
And just,
postcode
you have to do by
from
zip code.
zip code. I was just like, I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
I never heard that
You know,
before. And I think it's really, really cool to get to hear from someone who is actually innovating, right? Like actually pushing the boundary of where we can operate. And I love that idea of, because one of the things that irks me the most about private practice is the idea that I'll do the same thing for you 5 times, and
yeah.
I'll charge
Yeah.
you the same thing five
Right.
times, right? And that just
Right.
cannot continue. That just
Right.
cannot continue.
Cannot
Um,
continue. Yeah.
so that's all super fascinating. Wouldn't it be great if there was a place where people could get together and talk about that kind of stuff?
That would be great. And actually, we have the perfect event. So yes, thank you for the pitch there. But yeah, so if you recall, when you and I were at the conference talking after, there was a lot of folks like us that were kind of lining up, and we all wanted to have further conversations.
Yep.
So that is when the host, Connie and Jeff, and my boss, Mark, kind of made the announcement that we will share more. I know a lot of people didn't get their questions answered, but we will do something to give back to the industry and make sure that Elaine and I can share. So we kind of came home, we sat on it a bit, but then it was pretty nice. Like people were reaching out and saying, hey, when are you going to share?
Mm.
So then we decided rather than having one-off conversations, let's do something. And so we got internal support from our business to have a DHL Legal Innovation Summit. And it is going to be June 3rd and 4th, based here in Columbus, Ohio. It's a day and a half event. It's free to attend, but attendees would have to pay for, their hotel and a flight if they, could attend. And we have posted the registration online on LinkedIn. And so if anybody's interested and has listened to this, you're certainly welcome to click on the link if you find me on LinkedIn or through David on LinkedIn and register. And more the merrier. We can fit about 200 people, attendees in the room, because it's two things. We don't want it too big because we want to have hands-on learning interaction, so that if we hit something in one of the presentations and folks are like, wait, let's break this down, we have the flexibility to do that. So a little bit different than other more formal conferences where, you have to stay on because people, are back to back. We want this to be much more hands-on, and it's kind of, we're pitching as in-house to in-house, like us coming together, asking our questions. And the theme this year is taking an idea from concept to production. So kind of the two use cases I just shared with you, and then some of the other things, we're going to give everyone a playbook of how do you take these ideas and then how do you actually turn that into something that's in production end to end. So that's the agenda and the theme for the event.
Awesome. And I think that's innovation in and of itself, right? To say, like, we have enough of a level of interest and engagement here that let's just get people together and talk about it. I think it's wonderful. I'm really excited about it. And as I
Me
said,
too.
I love Columbus, Ohio, so I
Yeah.
can't wait to come back.
Yeah.
My family's actually like, can we come? Can we come? We love Columbus.
I always,
They really are. They
yeah,
really
I
are.
tell people it's a hidden gem in the US. Because it's, of course, not one of the big cities. So I have had multiple family members live in DC and Philadelphia and Houston, all the big ones.
Mm.
And there's always something about when people come to Columbus that say, whoa, I didn't even know this was here. It has an amazing culture. It's built around the university. So everybody that's in Columbus, like, kind of came here. They were from other places and most came here for education. And of course, that turns into opportunities because a lot of large organizations have their headquarters here. So
Yeah.
you can get a really good job. So it's built quite the little community. And you're right, like, you're not the only one. There's like a lot of professional athletes and people that you wouldn't even expect that say, oh yeah, I have, like, my big mansion somewhere in Columbus and people don't even bother me or know I'm there. I love the city. So
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah.
your little
Well,
secret. Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really
Yeah.
looking forward to it. So on that note, I think
Mhm.
I've really enjoyed our conversation as always, Lynn. We could go on. We could
Yeah.
totally go on, but I- I'd like to say thank you so much for coming.
Yes.
And I really look forward to seeing you again soon.
Yeah.
And this has been the Legal Leaders Podcast, and we'll see you all again soon on the next episode. Thanks for joining
Thank
us.
you so much for having me, David.
Thank you. See you soon.
Bye.
If you enjoyed listening, please hit follow and leave us a review on your listening platform of choice. We love engaging with our community and hearing from you, so please head to inview.lawvu.com. Thank you so much for tuning in.